Welcome, weary YouTube viewer. You have stumbled into my tale's crypt. But now that you're trapped here, welcome here. Please do make yourself comfortable. Grab a drink, a snack, and a work in progress, and join me while I work on mine. I'm Mushy, and I'm so glad that you're here. I'm just sitting here, my mind wandering, and I got to thinking about things like old movies. One in particular, you know the one. It's called Risky Business. Had Tom Cruise in it, and there was like this one scene that everyone knows. Whether they've seen the movie or not, they know this scene. And it's a scene where he slides into the room by way of socked feet, wearing nothing but a white button-down shirt, some tidy whities, and some sunglasses. He's holding his hairbrush, lip-syncing a catchy tune. Yeah, that one. You do remember it, right? Or do you? Picture that scene in your mind. Can you see it? Do you remember it as I do? You do, right? Well, what if I told you, you and we're wrong. He never had a white shirt. A shirt? It was pink. And he never wore sunglasses in the entire scene. Making things even creepier, he doesn't sing into a hairbrush either. In the film, he's lip syncing into a trophy. And we aren't the only ones who have had this, quote, false memory. Millions of people remember the movie like we do. And every one of us is wrong. Or are we? Now, I asked you all in the Facebook group a few days ago, who invented electricity and how was it discovered? Well, duh, we all learned this in grammar school. Benjamin Franklin, he had a kite with a string, there was a key on it, lightning was happening. And so began our journey into the discovery of harnessing electricity. Everyone knows that. But what if I told you everyone's wrong? That you remember learning in school about Benjamin Franklin and his kite and his key and the lightning bolt. And that's how we discovered electricity and began harnessing it and using it in our daily lives? Wrong. What? It was actually Nikola Tesla. He discovered electricity before Ben Franklin did his experiment with the kite and the key. And that experiment didn't have to do with discovering electricity. He was actually trying to figure out basically how to make a battery, like portable electricity. But then why do most of us remember learning that it was Benjamin Franklin with his kite and his key and his lightning? How is it possible that we all share the memory of learning this, pretty indisputable fact as children in school? We learned the same lesson in school. Did we all, what's happening here? My friends, it's called the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect refers to a situation in which a large mass of people believes that an event occurred when it did not. The term was originated in 2009 by Fiona Broome after she discovered that she, along with countless others, believed that Nelson Mandela had died in the 1980s. When actually he didn't die until 2013. Looking at the origin of the Mandela Effect, some famous examples, and as well as some potential explanations for this strange confluence of perceptions, can help maybe shed some light on this unique phenomenon. Let's talk about the origins of the Mandela Effect a little more. The term Mandela Effect was first coined in 2009, like I said, by Fiona Broome when she created a website to detail her observation of this phenomenon. Broom was at a conference and she was talking to other people about how she remembered the tragedy of the former South African president Nelson Mandela's death in a South African prison in the 1980s. However, Nelson Mandela did not die in the 1980s in prison. He passed away in 2013. As Broom began to talk at the conference to other people about her memories, she learned that she was not alone in remembering this fact, that he had died in the 80s in prison. Others were remembering seeing news coverage of his death as well as a speech by his widow. All these people shared that same exact memory in the same exact way, in the same exact time period, the 80s. Now, Broom was shocked that such a large mass of people could remember the same identical event in such detail when it never really happened. And encouraged by her book publisher, she began to write some books and notes on things, and she started a website to discuss what she calls the Mandela Effect and incidents like it. Although Broom made no causal claims for her initial post, she firmly rejected the notion that the Mandela Effect resulted from false memories and instead cited parallel realities, alternate histories, and other fringe theories as her favorite science fiction explanations. Some have even posited that it's all a big government cover-up, that our governments are working together to effectively, slowly kind of erase and replace the history we all know. This Mandela Effect has fueled numerous untestable theories, including the phenomena occurring as a result of the string theory, or basically the mixing of different universes colliding into one. Such fringe theories have sparked intense debate online. In March of 2023, Broom reported that she experienced such harsh criticisms and attacks about the Mandela Effect that she was taking a step back from discussing the phenomenon altogether. However, she ended up reversing course later in the year and created a YouTube channel dedicated to the Mandela Effect and updated her website that focused on the topic. Beyond the widespread belief that Mandela died well before he actually did, there are several other notable examples of this same phenomena, many of which can be deemed something they call the VME, since they are described as false memories about a specific visual icon. Here are some popular examples of the Mandela Effect. Mr. Monopoly. Yeah, the one from the board game. One of the most cited examples of the Mandela Effect involves Mr. Monopoly, the mascot of the popular board game, Monopoly. Picture him in your mind. He's an older, bald man. He wears a fancy three-piece suit and a top hat, wears a monocle on his eye, right? Wrong. He does not have, nor has he ever had, a monocle. Do you remember him with a monocle? Because I do. Here's another one. Snow White. We've all seen Snow White. Well, most of us have. And what's one of the most famous lines in that movie? Take a minute, friend. Say it to yourself. Say it out loud. You know what it is. I'll say it for you. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? You know that line, right? What if I told you you don't remember the line? That is not the line. It's actually magic mirror on the wall. What? Mind blown. Here's another. Do you remember the popular kids' childhood little mischievous monkey, Curious George? He was like a popular animated and book character. And Curious George was a monkey. Do you remember him having a tail? No tail? Think about it. If you said that, yeah, Curious George had a tail, he's a monkey, you're wrong. But that's how most of us remember him, is with a tail. How is this possible? And how about those of us old enough to remember that one family of bears? That they had a whole book series. We saw them, most of us were exposed to them as children. They were, what was the name of the family? The Berenstein Bears, right? That's how I remember it. But I'm wrong. Were you? It has always been the Berenstain Bears. Like what? Are you kidding? Another popular example is Mickey Mouse. This famed Disney character is clad in red shorts with suspenders. Quick, what color are Mickey Mouse's suspenders? Were they white? Were they red with yellow dots? How about none? How about Mickey Mouse doesn't wear suspenders? Nope. He's often misremembered as having had suspenders, when instead he wears a pair of suspenderless red shorts. Okay, one more. Remember that peanut butter that our moms used to always make our sandwiches with for school and stuff? Jiffy? Me too. Except that never existed. The name was actually just Jif, J-I-F, not Jiffy. I'm serious. Mind exploding right now. What the heck? So what exactly causes people, kind of like us, who are not really connected to each other, to remember the same inaccurate details about an image, an event, or a time in pop culture? No one really knows the answer to that, but everyone has a theory. There's two main theories that people have come up with to deal with these, memory lapses. The first is that we're experiencing glitches in the Matrix. Look up glitches in the Matrix on Reddit and get ready to become completely paranoid. The second theory is that the memories that we have are real, but there's a rift between parallel universes or timelines that has altered the current timeline. So while we have these memories, and they did in fact happen the way we remember them, the universe changed on us, and now we're in a different timeline where it never happened at all. While the Mandela Effect was first used to describe false memory about specific events in time, the visual Mandela Effect, the VMA, that occurs when people falsely remember details about specific images or, things that they've seen, not just things that they've, more like images like the Mickey Mouse or the GIF, not exclusive to things that happened, like the death of Nelson Mandela. Anyway, this all sounds pretty ridiculous, right? Like, on one hand, mass misremembering, kind of like mass hysteria. Really? But on the other hand, an equally disturbing theory like mixed universes or collided timelines or, parallel realities. Which is more ludicrous? You tell me. Let's explore this together with some more examples and then kind of reevaluate what we think. You might be surprised by what we discover. I thought it would be fun for us to find some Mandela effects in horror movies. I mean, we are dark and creepy, right? So let's start with The Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lecter quotes are a staple of pop culture, but one of the most famous lines from 1991's The Silence of the Lambs is, quote, "Hello, Clarice." This happens when he meets Clarice for the first time, when she comes to see him in his little plastic fiberglass bubble room thing. It's been parodied a bajillion times. Well, what if I told you he never said, "Hello, Clarice"? The first time Starling and Lecter meet, all he says is, quote, "Morning," end quote. That's it. And at the end of the film, on the phone, he says, quote, "Well, Clarice," end quote. So are we all just misremembering one of the arguably most famous quotes of the movie? Okay, well, here's another one. The movie Gremlins. What was the name of the leader of the Gremlins in the iconic 1994 Christmas horror comedy? Just as memorable as Gizmo, the main antagonist of the Gremlins is a vile green monster named Spike. This fanged creature, created by feeding the furry little mogwai after midnight, was a huge toy from the 1980s. Everyone had a Stripe doll. That's right. His name was Stripe, not Spike. Yet for so many fans of the franchise, it's always been Spike. When this one was discovered a few years ago, it caused mass confusion. Stripe? What a dumb name. I mean, maybe we should just stick with Spike. You know, kind of like force the universe to reverse that glitch. Let's go all the way back to 1931 with Frankenstein. There have been many tellings and retellings of Mary Shelley's classic novel Frankenstein. But the 1931 film adaptation is still considered to be one of the best adaptations of the tale. In a very memorable scene, Dr. Frankenstein raises his monster's lifeless body into a lightning storm. Once it's reanimated, he yells an iconic line. What was that line? Do you remember? If you said, "He's alive," you were wrong. The doctor actually uses the pronoun it. He says, "It's alive," not "he's alive." And while it may seem like a minor distinction, it shows that Frankenstein truly sees his creation as a monster instead of a human being. This clever little detail definitely deserves to be remembered accurately, but none of us do. How about The Lost Boys, 1987? During the scene where the vampiric David and his friends share their Chinese food with Michael, fans remember that the noodles turned into writhing worms. The cheeky bloodsucker follows up that shocking moment with the line, quote, "How do you like your worms, Michael?" end quote. I remember that, don't you? But would you be surprised to know that David never said that line? Instead, Michael's container of rice briefly turns into maggots, and David asks, quote, "How do you like your maggots, Michael?" end quote. At a later point in the scene, Michael does briefly see a box of noodles as worms, but you guys, I remember that scene. Sundown remembers that scene. We've talked about it, and now we're going to go back and watch the movie because we remember it as, you know, the noodles turning into worms and they being asked, "How do you like your worms, Michael?" Do you guys remember it that way too? What is going on here? Here's another one. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. You've probably seen the original installment of this classic horror franchise, and you might remember that it was a total bloodbath. It was filled with like blood and all these gruesome death scenes, and you'd definitely be right about like all these murderous aspects. Man, what a bloodbath, right? Wrong. There was less blood than fans might expect to remember. While characters certainly met violent ends, very little blood is actually shown throughout the film. In fact, the director, Tobe Hooper, he hoped implying instead of showing violence would lead the film to get a PG rating. Unfortunately, the plan majorly backfired, and the film initially got an X rating before editing allowed it down to an R. And it's ironic that reducing the amount of blood caused so much trouble for this violent film. But you guys, I remember the original being like totally, I remember people freaking out over it and being glorified and horrified and grossed out. And how do we remember this so wrong? Is it really possible? Let's look at Child's Play from 1988. Who was brave enough to kiss Chucky? Do you remember the scene where Andy's mom, Karen, kisses her son goodnight, and then the little boy asks his mom to kiss Chucky too? I remember that scene. Sundown did too. Others remember that maybe it was the aunt was the one that was showing the affection to the doll, giving it a kiss goodnight. But regardless of whether it was Karen the mom or the aunt, if you said you remembered this scene along with us, no, you didn't. Neither scene made the cut. While there were moments where both Maggie and Karen tuck Andy into bed, they never added a Chucky goodnight kiss. What? And yet another, The Exorcist, 1973. This horror classic has many memorable and frankly disgusting scenes, but one aspect of those moments has resulted in the Mandela effect for many viewers. And when thinking back to the moments leading up to Reagan losing her lunch in front of Father Karras, do you remember the feeding tube? She had a feeding tube in her, from the IV line or bag or whatever to her nose, up into her nose. Reagan had a feeding tube. If you don't remember that feeding tube, welcome to the Exorcist Mandela Effect. It's hard to explain why so many horror fans can't recall this feeding tube being in the scene, but it was. The character had one, right up until the point she spewed pea soup. Let's look at one of my favorite horror series, Friday the 13th. This one has become a slasher film trope, especially in parodies of the genre. The scary killer wears a hockey mask, and he wields a variety of weapons over all the installments of the series. Think back to the one scene where he used a chainsaw on his victim. Can you envision that scene? Do you remember that one? You might be surprised to learn that in 12 films with Jason Voorhees, not once did he ever use a chainsaw. Most frequently, he's seen with his machete, but Jason has used axes, buzzsaws, and even a sleeping bag to claim his victims. Ironically enough, though, he's never tried to use a chainsaw on anyone, although at least 2 characters have tried to use a chainsaw on him. Okay, another. Dracula, 1931. Ask anyone to do an impression of Dracula, and they'll inevitably say Bela Lugosi's famous line in an exaggerated Transylvanian accent. It'll sound something like, I want to suck your blood. That was terrible. I mean, we all know that line though, right? Well, most of us have said it at least once in our lives. I want to suck your blood. Iconic, right? Wrong. It was never uttered in the original 1931 film Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi. It certainly wasn't ever in the book, yet every parody of that Dracula ever has had that line, and it's usually with some silly Transylvanian accent. The glitch strikes again, my friends. There's even a Mandela Effect for Scary Movie 2 from 2001. Viewers have been misquoting this one for decades. In this horror movie parody, Hansen, the caretaker, has one visibly misshapen hand that is played up for laughs. The biggest joke comes when a character named Dwight is left hanging off the side of the building on a candle structure. When Hansen shows up, he offers his malformed hand that the distressed man refuses to take. Many remember the caretaker insisting that Dwight should take his strong hand. Do you remember that scene? Well, would you believe me if I told you Hansen does not say that at all? He does not offer his strong hand. He says, quote, "Here, take my good hand," end quote. What? No, that was the whole joke, is that he handed him the misshapen kind of weak hand and says, "Here, take my strong hand." That was the whole punchline. How did it not happen? Okay, here's another one. "We're gonna need a bigger boat." We all know that line. Jaws, 1975. And even though it's universally considered one of the most iconic lines in all of movie history, after being stunned by seeing the shark for the first time, viewers remember Roy Schneider's character saying, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." Remember? Like, how could we forget? But it turns out that's not exactly the line. The character Brody actually says, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." And what about the movie posters? Really think about this one, you guys. What those movie posters look like. The word Jaws. Okay? The word Jaws had a shark bite taken out of the J in all of them. Can you picture it in your mind? Maybe you have it on your wall even. Most people remember this. That was part of the fear factor, was seeing the movie poster and the J and Jaws had a big shark tooth bite situation taken out of it. However, that would be a false recollection. The letter always appears completely whole and unbitten. Okay, total break and side note here. Is any of this getting to anyone yet? Like, is anyone else like, WTF? Because this whole time, I'm doing this research and I'm finding these things and I'm like, every 5 seconds, I'm like, WTF? Like, I'm questioning my sanity and existence here. Yee! Okay, let's get back to it. Okay, so did you guys ever see that one Anne Rice vampire novel movie adaptation? It was the one with Tom Cruise and what's his face? Brad Pitt. Yeah, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt were in it. And what was that movie called? It was something to do with interviewing vampires. It was Interview with a Vampire, right? No. It was not Interview with a Vampire. If you've ever Googled Anne Rice's 1976 vampire novel or its film adaptation, you may have noticed that several of the suggested search words that has the title like Interview with a Vampire. But you may be surprised to learn this is not actually the title. The film and the book are actually titled Interview with the Vampire, and it's always been that way. It's a pretty minor mix-up, all things considered, but one that many fans of the book and movie take as proof of the Mandela Effect. This misconception has even permeated the press for the 1994 film adaptation, with the Oscars, Tom Cruise, and even Anne Rice herself referring to the film by the incorrect title. Are you serious? I mean, the author herself, you'd think she would know the best, right? I don't know. I feel like something dinky going on there. Okay, anyway. So now we're going to turn our attention to Freddy Krueger, A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984. Iconic, right? Now, let me ask you this. Okay, ready? Comment below, and no cheating, guys, please. Don't cheat. Just comment. Does he wear a red and brown sweater? A red and gray sweater? A red and black sweater? Or a red and green sweater? I want to see who remembers what. You might get real shocked by the answer, but please comment below what you remember seeing Freddy wear. We all know he wears that sweater. It's iconic. But what were the colors? Let me know in the comments below. All right, anyway, one of the biggest discrepancies comes with a phone call that's made in the movie. When Freddy is messing with Nancy, Many people remember him calling her a bitch before she drops the phone. Do you remember that scene? Like, he's on the phone and he gets all kind of angry, and the last thing is, blah, 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 B, right? It was a pearl-clutching moment for sure. The audacity of that man. Well, thank goodness, because it never happened. Nope, he never called her the big B. Although we all remember, we all heard it. It was a shocker. And the look on her face, she was like, oh my gosh, the audacity of this man. Yeah, no, never happened. If you don't believe me, go check it out. Another one was the Blair Witch Project in 1999. So the Blair Witch Project took like found footage horror to the next level, listing its actors as, quote, missing or, quote, deceased during the marketing campaign. The gimmick, it got me, you guys. Like, I went to see that and I thought I was watching literal lost footage. I didn't know for years that it was all fake and act. Okay, don't come at me, okay? I was young. But anyway, the gimmick was a success, and with many moviegoers leaving theaters unsettled by the film's dubious reality. And in one of the film's most memorable moments, one of the characters, Heather, she looks at the camera and delivers this really emotional monologue. It's the one that, like, where she's laying there and all you can see is her face. She's crying and blubbering and sobbing and like snot bubbles everywhere and drool. I mean, she's you remember that one, right? And she says the line, "I'm so scared." I remember that. Do you? I mean, how could you forget? However, we're wrong, because the line was actually, "I'm so sorry," not "I'm so scared." How does this make sense to anybody? I remember her saying that she was so scared. Her eyes were darting around and really wide. She's a blubbering mess. And like, they want us to believe she said, "I'm so sorry," not "I'm so scared." It just doesn't make sense. What is she sorry for anyway? Is she the Blair Witch? No. I mean, sorry what? That she's scared? I'd be scared. Even the parody scary movie writers remembered the line wrong. They remember it as "I'm so scared," not "I'm so sorry." And speaking of scary movie, our next one comes from the 2000 original scary movie parody. One of these films, the first one, parodied M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. The parody scene references the big twist from the 1999 film, with Marlon Wayans' character in a room full of his white friends, looks one of his friends right in the eyes, and he whispers to him, "I see white people." That at the time was supposed to be the punchline of the joke. At least that's how most people remember the movie and its line. But in reality, Wayans' character just says, "I see dead people." It's a weak joke, simply repeating the line from The Sixth Sense. Some fans, however, remember the scene very differently, and they believe that the scene was clear in the joke that Wayans was in a room of white people saying, "I see white people." And in fact, it's a line that better fits the comedic franchise and Wayans' sort of brand of comedy as a whole. But there's no evidence that this alternate line ever existed in the film. So, does everybody just remember the Wayans comedy, the movie, the joke, the punchline, all wrong? Or is something weird going on here? Rosemary's Baby is another one, 1968. A number of horror films thrive on tension. This film centers around the horrific pregnancy of Rosemary Woodhouse and ends with her child's birth. She gives birth to a demonic baby with, like, a demonic face and hooves. Do you remember? Well, if you said yes, you remember, you are so wrong. You don't remember. because the baby is never actually shown on screen. There is a flash of demonic eyes during the film. However, that haunting image is largely believed to be the representation of the devil, but they never actually showed the baby looking devilish. They never showed the baby at all. Uh, Either way, reports of seeing the baby's face and hooves are greatly exaggerated, but very voluminous as well. The viewers were left to fill in the most terrifying blanks on their own. So basically, the movie ended with her child's birth, and many, many people remember seeing this little demon baby and all its features, but that isn't actually in the movie. So, how do we all misremember that? And how do we all remember seeing the same thing if it wasn't actually shown? And yet another one is Saw 2004. Now, Saw is known for its intense torture-based horror, and at the center of it all is a white-faced puppet named Billy. Acting as a way for the antagonist, John Kramer, to communicate with his victims, Billy gives characters the option to subject themselves to excruciating pain or face certain death. These options are referred to as games. And we all know the famous line where Billy asks his guests, "Do you want to play a game?" But contrary to popular belief, Billy doesn't ask whether his guests want to play. In the original Saw film, Billy never says, "Do you want to play a game?" Instead, he does say, "I want to play a game." It's a simple change, but one that definitely changes the whole tone of the movie. So, how do you remember it? It's been parodied and repeated many times as "Do you want to play a game?" How do so many of us have it wrong? Is it even possible? And there are a few more, like Scooby-Doo. Remember Shaggy? The skinny hippie guy with the confusing chin beard and an unending appetite for sandwiches? Remember him having that giant Adam's apple that always moved around when he was scared? Yeah, me too. Like, what was up with that? I don't know, because it doesn't exist. It never existed. Only in later iterations was it added. But I think it's because, Scooby-Doo, we think of the old cartoons from the 70s, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? He never had one of those Adam's apples. And the fact that they added it into the modern cartoons, I think, they remember it being there too. Honestly, I think they remember it being there and they're like, shoot, we need to add it. Or maybe they're making fun of us for so many people misremembering that are they messing with us, or what is going on? There was an Adam's apple, there wasn't, now there is. You guys, I think Shaggy always had one. I remember him having one. The big gulps when they'd come across somebody scary in a mask. Scooby, run, I mean, whatever. But also that Scrappy Doo, that that can't word, that precocious little shit, that we all hated. He never existed. I'm just kidding. Scrappy Doo is real. Sorry, not sorry. Sorry. Would you believe me if I told you there is a Mandela Effect assertion associated with the movie E.T.? Okay, now this is getting ridiculous because E.T.'s famous for a few things. His finger lights up, he likes Reese's, and he says E.T. phone home, right? I mean, he's famous for these things. Wrong. Even though you're picturing the exact scene in your head right now, I'm telling you it never happened. The extraterrestrial E.T. never ever says E.T. phone home. Rather, he says that awkwardly worded ET home phone. Seems like a small detail, right? And it would be if this wasn't the main line that everybody remembers from the film. We all remember E.T. phone home, right? I mean, we all remember it. But they're trying to tell us, and I guess it is now, E.T. home phone. No, what do you guys think? I grew up on this. It's E.T. phone home. Okay. Anyway, let's go over just a few non-scary movie related Mandela effects, just so I leave you guys on a more, I don't know, curious and positive note with not all this horror stuff. All right, Eileen, this is for you. Go get your Grease DVD, because this one is gonna shock anyone who has ever sung along with the famous Greased Lightning song. Ask any musical fan of this production, and they will swear that the opening line is, quote, "Guys, this car is gonna be ultramatic, systematic, hydromatic. Why, it can be greased lightning." You guys are thinking the song in your head, right? I'm fighting the urge to sing the song. And unfortunately, Eileen's actually heard me sing it. Sorry, Eileen. But anyway, we all know that that's the opening line where he gets all dramatic and then they burst into song, right? Again, the line is, guys, this car can be ultramatic, systematic, hydromatic. Why, it can be greased lightning, right? And yet, so wrong. Rather, John Travolta sings, quote, "Guys, this car can be systematic, hydromatic, ultramatic. Why, it can be greased lightning." So, originally, everybody knows it as ultramatic, systematic, hydromatic. But really, they're telling us it's systematic, hydromatic, ultramatic. What makes this one such a major issue is that it's sung. So many people remember the sing-song way the original misquote went. Yet, if you load up the film, you'll see it for yourself. I'm telling you, go look. Pull it up, go look. I guess I don't care what we remember, because that's another one I grew up on. And you've watched it, heard it, sung it 500,000 million jillion infinite amount of times, and it's always been the same. But apparently, we've always been wrong. Whatever. I don't believe that crap. Eileen, please tell me you know what. Please tell me your mind is blown. Please tell me you remember it the way that we all remember it. Or are we all just crazy? Okay, and how about all you Star Wars fans out there? Any Star Wars fans? I'm not, but okay, so apparently there's Mandela effect in the Star Wars series. So everyone apparently misquotes Star Wars. Ask anyone and they will tell you that the twisted reveal in The Empire Strikes Back is easy to remember. It was, quote, "Luke, I am your father." Except that it's not "Luke, I am your father." The line is actually, "No, I am your father." While most will assume that the original quote is too vague to be used in day-to-day movie quoting, thus it was changed to many to name Luke, there's one small problem with that. Even James Earl Jones himself, the voice behind the famous line, remembers it the, quote, wrong way. He remembers "Luke, I am your father," and not "No, I am your father," as someone out there in the Matrix wants us to believe. And real quick, what color is C3PO? Gold? Cool. Right. But what color are his legs? Also gold? No. One leg is gold and one is silver. If that one doesn't knock you for a bit of a loop, you might be an android. I mean, what? I've never noticed that before. This strange discovery was sending fanboys and fangirls into tizzies, unearthing action figures from years gone by. But go see for yourself. Apparently, C-3PO, the beloved Star Wars robot, has always had one silver leg. Even the most diehard of fans have been scratching their head over this reveal. Okay, and how about this? You might need to be, a little older for this one, but in the mid-90s, Sinbad released a film by the name Shazam. Okay, this movie was about a genie discovered by children in their attic, and it had some memorable moments. In the trailer, as the kids unearth this comic from his magic lamp, he appears in a puff of smoke. As he announces that he is the genie of the lamp, the children scurry, with one of them screaming, "It's a kidnapper!" Good times, right? One small little detail, though. None of that happened. You heard me. None of that happened. Shazam, the film project, never happened. Your memories of watching this movie are not real. This is one of the biggest Mandela effects regarding an unmade movie, as so many people share the same memories of it. You can hear quotes and descriptions of the VHS box all over the place. I mean, Sundown and I both remembered this movie, you guys. Both of us remembered seeing this movie. We watched it as, not young kids, but weren't teens, like that preteen age. We saw this movie. I don't know what to, I don't know. There's a general unshakable feeling that this picture did exist and has even led people to accusing Sinbad the comedian and the studio of some sort of bizarre cover-up. Sinbad has had a sense of humor about the film, and he's released parodies and YouTube videos portraying the genie that so many people seem to remember. And he even told a publication called IndieWire, quote, "It came out of nowhere and nobody knows why," end quote. Okay, and now I'm calling out to you Star Trek fans. So apparently, allegedly, the quote, "Beam me up, Scotty," is nowhere in the Star Trek series. Nowhere in the Star Trek series does Captain Kirk say the exact phrase, "Beam me up, Scotty." It just never happened. There have been cases of him saying, "Beam us up," or even, "Scotty, beam me up." But hardcore fans have been searching for the exact "Beam me up, Scotty" quote ever since the Mandela Effect has been discovered. And like the Enterprise searching for the mysteries of the universe, they too have yet to find it. The next one I have is from Field of Dreams, that old Kevin Costner movie. So Field of Dreams had like a strong baseball-centric message. Plowing through his own cornfield because voices told him to, Kevin Costner's character is seen as a kook within his farming town. Yet he felt compelled to plow through his own field and make this baseball field. And once he did, the whole town turned out and turned up for him. And he knew that they would. After all, the voice in his head said that if you build, they will come. The problem with this is that the quote is, "If you build it, he will come." It's referring to Terrence Mann, who was being like summoned to the area by a greater universal power. Still, people misquote this line and swear they are right to this day, decades since it first aired. Now, I've heard this. You hear it parodied or used a million times over in a million different ways. If you build it, they will come. But that's not the line. It was, if you build it, he will come. How could so many people be so wrong about such an iconic quote? And to round us out, here are some non-movie related Mandela Effect little nuggets, if you will. You may not be able to identify every piece of fruit in the logo for the clothing brand Fruit of the Loom, but everybody at least knows that there is a cornucopia behind the fruit, right? Wrong. Just ask the company itself. There is no cornucopia, even if we all remember it. And you can thank Kellogg's for this entry in the weird spelling section of the Mandela Effect catalog, because while the very well-known cereal was supposedly fruit-flavored, they decided to really lean into those loops and double up on the double O's, opting for fruit being spelled F-R-O-O-T loops instead of fruit F-R-U-I-T loops. I've never noticed that before. Fruit Loops is spelled F-R-O-O-T? Why have I never noticed this before? It's always been fruit like F-R-U-I-T. Okay, whatever. Sure. Now I'm going to have to look at that next time I go to the store and confirm. Because I would swear that it's fruit spelled right. Anyway, many people report Pikachu, a Pokemon character, as having a black-tipped tail. But in reality, the character's tail has always been a solid yellow tail. Some think the confusion or maybe false memory comes from the fact that Pikachu has black-tipped ears. And so people just naturally assume, or they, mentally impose a black-tipped tail. But any Pokemon fans out there? What is your take on this? Has Pikachu always had a totally yellow tail? Because I seem to remember him having a black tip tail. I don't know. Now let's see. There is some controversy over the spelling of the famous brand of hot dogs, Oscar Mayer Wieners. Some people claim to remember the brand being spelled M-E-Y-E-R instead of M-A-Y-E-R, which is the correct spelling. And you guys, they made a song. Do you remember? It was a really long time ago, but I remember it one summer, and for some reason the jingle was stuck in my head. And I don't know, my dad has always been a butcher, and so I've exposed to meat and stuff. And so I remember this. And O-S-C-A, I don't know, it was the baloney thing. M-E-Y-E-R. It's M-E-Y-E-R. But they're trying to convince my memory that it's wrong, and it's M-A-Y-E-R. Anybody else remember that? They had the Wienermobile. It was this big bus that was converted into a hot dog with a bun. Please, somebody tell me you remember it too. And please, somebody tell me that you remember the name, the jingle, and that the name was spelled M-E-Y-E-R. I don't want to be the only crazy one. Apparently I'm not, because it's in this Mandela Effect. So I'm not the only one who remembers it. Hopefully you do too, though. Let's see. Another one. Okay. Where is New Zealand in relation to Australia? Where? Because if you look at a map, you'll see that it is southeast of the country. However, there is a community of people who claim that they remember New Zealand being northeast of Australia, not southeast. Where do you remember New Zealand being? And, Hollywood contributed to the Mandela Effect when in 2019, the Mr. Rogers biopic was named, quote, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, end quote, a reference to the opening line of the famous song that opened every episode of Fred Rogers' show. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. You remember that song, right? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Beautiful day in the neighborhood, right? In reality, though, The song opens up with the line, "It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood." I don't remember it like that. I grew up with this guy. It was a beautiful day in the neighborhood, not this neighborhood. Interesting, right? And here's a couple more and then we'll go, okay? So, popular belief, Captain Crunch cereal. Captain, okay? The reality is that it's Cap'n, CAP''N, Crunch. How do you remember it? Captain Crunch or Cap'n Crunch? And as a side note, fun fact, the cereal's mascot is named Horatio Magellan Crunch. And get this, he's not even a captain. He's a commander. But that's like a whole different story. Yeah. And what about Kit Kat? Do you remember Kit Kat bars having a hyphen? So Kit-Kat? I do. But apparently the Kit Kat candy is unhyphenated and never had a hyphen in between the two words. It's true, the hyphen does not separate the kit from the cat. The brand has even addressed the Mandela effect in a tweet in 2016 saying, the Kit Kat name has never been hyphenated on either the UK or the US wrappers. And what about Skechers shoes, you guys? Skechers. I have several pairs. In fact, I'm looking at one right now. And 1 second, please. Let me just... Oh my gosh. I don't even... Okay. Well, that's just one pair. I'm not going to dig out all my Skechers. I have a couple pairs, but I just looked at one and I'm kind of shocked. So tell me in the comments below, but also like right now to yourself, how is the word Skechers spelled for the Skechers brand shoes? No cheating. Spell Skechers from Skechers brand shoes right now, please. Okay, it's Sketcher, right? Skechers. Skechers. That's how you spell sketch. Skechers. Wrong. There's no T. The footwear brand spells Skechers without a T. I swear, I've been buying Skechers since I was a teen for years. I swear there was a T in there. I just looked and there's no T in this particular pair of my Skechers. But you guys, Skechers, I swear they had a T in their name. Somebody tell me you're with me. Please, I'm not crazy. I know I saw it. Okay. Okay. Now, let's see. Another one is from The Matrix. We all know that fans of the franchise remember Lawrence Fishburne, who plays Morpheus, explaining the Matrix to Keanu Reeves' character Neo by starting his monologue off with the words, "What if I told you?" Okay, so picture that scene and Lawrence Fishburne and his voice, and he's like, "What if I told you?" The line picked up so much traction, it became a viral meme. But as it turns out, that quote was never spoken. It wasn't in the movie. That line doesn't exist. Talk about a glitch in the Matrix. 'Cause I remember that. Seriously, I cannot be the only person who remembers that part of the movie, and he's gonna, blow Keanu Reeves' mind, and he's like, "What if I told you?" And then he goes into the whole thing. I saw it. Tell me you saw it. I think I'm starting to go a little crazy here. Another kind of popular belief, Smokey the Bear. We all know and remember him from our childhoods, right? We were all taught about preventing wildfires and forest fires. He campaigns about campfire safety and gives tips about wildfire prevention. He's Smokey Bear, not Smokey the Bear, like we all remember. No, we all remember wrong because his name is Smokey Bear. And what about, snack food? These cheesy snacks. Cheez-Its. Yeah. I think we've all had at least one Cheez-It, and, if we haven't, we know the brand, we know the food Cheez-Its. It's Cheez-It. There's no extra Z at the end of its. It's just cheese it, not cheese its. What? It's always been cheese its. Oh my gosh. Anyway, how about fans of the show, what is that? The Lucy and Ricky, Lucille Ball's show. I love Lucy. Thank you. So there's a real famous line from that show where Ricky Ricardo has a catchphrase, right? Think about it. What's his catchphrase? We all know it. He would cross his arms and say, "Lucy, you've got some splaining to do." Well, yeah, no, that quote was never said. That line was not uttered even once in the sitcom's 6 seasons. Not once. Apparently, we all remember something that didn't exist. What? And then the last one I have for you guys, the last one I have for you guys is, on our cars, those little like side rear view mirror things, and it says in little like blue print or whatever, objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. The reality is that actually says objects in mirror are closer than they appear. Whoa. It's always been objects in mirror may be closer than they appear. But apparently reality dictates that it's objects in mirror are closer than they appear. You guys, I could give you Mandela effects for days. For weeks. There are so many. But alas, I have cages to clean and shackles to polish. I'm kidding. I have to put baby Pinhead down for his nap. But before we go, I must know, what do you think of this Mandela effect situation? Do you know, something that was on this list that I told you and you were wrong? Have you been hit by the Mandela effect like me? And which one got to you? Also, I kind of want to know, do you think, what do you think this phenomena is? Is it some kind of weird mass hysteria type of thing? Or is there something more here? Something disturbing? Are you from a different reality, timeline, or parallel universe stuck here in this only slightly different version of your home universe? Could we actually be in a matrix? Do you know any other interesting Mandela effects? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, stay safe, friends.